She's passionate about a variety of progressive causes, including reproductive freedom, LGBTQ plus rights, anti-racism, immigration, healthcare, and climate justice. By day, Becca is a market research consultant, and in her spare time, she sings with Boston's Back Bay Chorale. She's married to John, her husband of more than 30 years. They have 3 grown children, and as she says, a wonderful daughter-in-law. Friends, please welcome home to Auburn, Becca Michaels Cornett.
So the only reason I didn't recognize Melina is that when I was in school, teachers didn't have first names. So I knew I was going to meet this cool lady named Melina. I said, oh, okay. Oh, Mrs. C. So that's why. Of course I would have remembered you. So I just want to thank Angela so much for inviting me to participate in this great event tonight. And she asked me if I would read this article from Slate magazine, which I feel like I always have to explain. My cousin Anna and I had the byline on the article, but it was a group effort written by all of the granddaughters of George Michaels and some of the older, teenage and up great-granddaughters, my daughter included. We gathered virtually very soon after the Dobbs decision and said, we've got to do something. Our Uncle Bill had written an article about the vote and tried, shopped it to the New York Times, who never picked it up. And so we decided to kind of use that as our base and write an article about this. And it just so happens that Slate picked it up. They, at the same time, they have a podcast called Slow Burn, which, unbeknownst to us, their topic for that series was abortion, and they had actually touched on this vote in one of the episodes. We had no clue. So when we shot the article to them, they grabbed it, which was really interesting. This was a completely separate initiative from the documentary that we're going to see tonight. It was totally, that had started well prior to this. This was just sort of the women in this generation and younger in the Michaels family feeling like we had to do something. So this is what we wrote. And this is written in 2022. And it's called Our Grandfather's Change of Heart on Abortion. More than 50 years ago, our grandfather's act of courage ended his political career. We're still grateful. On April 9th, 1970, our grandfather, George Michaels, was an assemblyman in the New York State legislature. That day, the body was set to vote on legislation that would lift New York State's abortion restrictions and legalize the procedure. At first, the vote was a tie. Our grandfather had voted against it. But then he made a surprising choice that changed history. A legislator representing a conservative Catholic district, our grandfather was not interested in risking his seat by voting for a new abortion rights bill. He knew his constituents weren't in favor of the liberalization effort, and he had voted against 2 previous bills to expand access to abortion. But about a week before the bill was to be reconsidered, his daughter-in-law, Sarah, who's my mother, asked him how he planned to vote this time around. He believed the bill would pass regardless of his vote. So he told her that for political purposes, including his standing within his district, he planned to vote against it. And if it didn't end up passing, he assumed the bill would likely pass the following year. But Sarah was persistent. She had seen firsthand the repercussions of self-administered abortions. Not only did she work in the social services sector, but she also knew about a tough experience a close friend had with an illegal abortion. She told him that if he didn't take a stand on this issue, real women would continue to be mutilated and harmed in the meantime. His son Jim, while working as a rabbinic intern in a mainly Black neighborhood in the Midwest, had witnessed the negative impacts of unwanted pregnancies. He had previously told his father about the efforts of clergy and community leaders to find safe abortion services for low-income women and girls. He also asked his father not to let his vote be the one to defeat the bill. The debate on the floor was heated. There were passionate speeches both for and against the bill. The roll call vote began, and, to our grandfather's dismay, the bill was deadlocked in a 74-74 tie vote. Just as the speaker was about to gavel the bill down to defeat, our grandfather rose to his feet, trembling, and with tears in his eyes, asked to speak. Mr. Speaker, I fully appreciate that this is the termination of my political career, but what's the use of getting elected or reelected if you don't stand for something, he said, looking tired and emotional. I cannot, in good conscience, stand here and be the vote that defeats this bill. I therefore request, Mr. Speaker, to change my negative vote to an affirmative vote. Then he slumped down in his chair with his head in his hands, an image that would be published in newspapers across the country. Assemblywoman Constance Cook, the Republican who had helped co-sponsor the bill, hugged him. The next day, Governor Rockefeller signed the bill into law. Because the bill did not contain a residency requirement, it meant that not only could women in New York get an abortion, but so could any woman who was able to travel to the state. 3 years later, this New York law helped influence the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision. When he returned to his home in Auburn after the vote, he was not a welcome sight. He lost business and was shunned by friends of 40 years. His partners in the law firm he started decades prior informed him they wanted to split up the partnership. He debated whether he should run for his state assembly seat again, especially considering the impact his vote was already having on his wife and family. Hateful letters came in the mail and were published in the newspaper. The police had the Michaels family home on cruise alert. His own party was unsure if they wanted to nominate our grandfather for re-election. After hearing this, our grandmother, Helen, sobbed and said, "These people turned on you, on us." He did end up running again, but as he predicted in his speech on the assembly floor, our grandfather lost his re-election and never held elected office again. Crushed by the loss of the election and his law practice, our grandfather started a new law firm with his son and was pleasantly surprised that most of his old clients came back to him. It also did not take long for his friends to resurface. In fact, one former political foe came up to our grandfather on the street and said, "Let me shake the hand of a brave man." Eventually, our grandfather started receiving numerous accolades for his courageous act, including an award of merit from the Ethical Cultural Society. He relished that he was known as a man of high integrity and courage. Our grandmother, on the other hand, did not forgive or forget so easily. She had lost her social circle and strongly felt the rejection of those who had turned on her husband. She stopped engaging in social activities and had no desire to entertain at the house. Abortion rights was never our grandfather's cause or what he wanted to be known for. Many years later, as he was recalling his vote to his twin granddaughters on a car ride, he said that the prior times he voted against abortion rights bills, he only had sons. The issue felt remote to him. But in 1970, he had his first grandchild, a granddaughter. He hoped that one day he might have more. The thought of one of them needing to get a back alley abortion was enough to change his mind. None of us remembers the first time we heard about our grandfather's decision. Whenever the vote is mentioned in our family, we know what's being referenced. We were raised knowing this story of courage. It's become part of our family's legacy. For many of us, abortion rights has been one of the leading issues for which we advocate and vote, not only because it impacts us and all women, but also because our grandfather's choice is a big part of our family's identity. When we tell this story to our friends and communities, we often see tears in their eyes, in part because it feels so distant from the politics we're all living through today. And this was written in 2022. Throughout his life, our grandfather heard from women thanking him for what he had done. He continued to receive recognition after he died, including from the National Abortion and Reproductive Rights Action League. 1 month after he died, his last granddaughter was born and named in honor of him. It's hard to believe one vote can make a difference, but as we see today in Congress, legislation is usually decided by a single or few votes, which means that even though it often feels so fruitless, your vote matters too. State-level elections matter too. What happens locally often goes on to influence what is happening at a national scale. In a matter of seconds, our grandfather helped pave the way for women's bodily autonomy for decades to come. And now, politicians and voters will face this dilemma again. Vote to keep their own political power or ensure the rights of their daughters and granddaughters. Our grandfather is our hero. He may have lost his political seat, but he gained so much more: the honor and respect not only of his family, but also of people around the nation. It's a rare story of political courage, one that we don't see enough. We hope this story and our memory of him might help convince you that sometimes the hard choices are the right ones. One day, your granddaughters will thank you.
I'm so moved. I have been asked by Angela to read a poem that I wrote when our current president was first elected, and I read it at a rally outside of, or in Seneca Falls. And I read it over and over again for quite a while. I read it here. I have fond memories of reading it here. And I've read it in a number of places, and then I retired it. And I thought I was done reading the poem, and it's back. It's called This is a Personal Poem. My name's Catherine Coles. I'm a poet, and I teach at Hobart and William Smith colleges. And it goes like this. We want you, they said, to do a political poem because you are a feminist poet, and I am a feminist poet, I thought, but I don't really do political poems. I thought I do personal poems. So this is a personal poem. Hi, I'm Catherine Coles, a feminist poet, as aforementioned, born and raised in a strict conservative religious household till I turned 18 and ran screaming away to college, would have happily burned my bra even till I found out that's not really a thing. This is a poem, a personal poem about my body, how by the age of 5 I was made to hate it, to be afraid of what it could do without my telling it. I wanted to control it. By 10, I was dieting, was sure I was overweight, bombarded with pictures everywhere, pretty tiny girls. And what with all that locker room talk, boys will be boys stuff one hears in school hallways or now out of the mouths of presidents. Who has time to worry about academics with all that pressure? Me and a million other 10-year-old girls, me and 2 million don't have time. This is a poem about how at 17, my best friend was sexually assaulted, backseat of her own car. No, she said clearly no, again no. Had to sit through church next day while her rapist blessed the sacrament. And we lived in a state where politicians had decided abortions were not allowed for 17-year-old girls whose parents would not sign off. Clearly their bodies were not their own. So we made a plan if it came to that, started sneaking small bills from our parents' wallets, planned to pack a suitcase of PB&Js, steal my family minivan, and drive to Denver, Colorado, home of a famed Planned Parenthood where we heard we wouldn't need a parent's permission for the abortion, sleep in the car, then take what we had coming when we both got back. This is a personal poem. Us and millions of teenagers over the years, us and millions of other girls. Years later, I had an abortion. Did you hear that? I had an abortion. This is a personal poem. This is not so long ago, already had a baby a year old and was still wrestling with dark postpartum, working full-time and sinking, and that was it. For me and the millions of others, me and the 1 in 3 women who will have an abortion by age 45. Look around. Me and 1 in 3 of us are in my personal poem. And more than half of women who have abortions like me already have kids, kids they want to protect, or who don't have the money or the stability or the desire to be a parent, or who made a mistake or were victims of chance or survivors of sexual assault, because it's my body, it's my body, it's my body, it's my family, it's my life. This is personal stuff. Who made me hate my body at age 10? Who made it impossible to get an abortion in my state at 17? Who made it so my crap health insurance in college didn't have to pay for birth control pills or pap smears and could routinely charge women up to 50% more pre-Obamacare, perfectly legal discrimination? Who made it so when I went on the last crashing job market in 2008, just my luck, half of the very few jobs in the country for feminist poets like me were canceled and never did come back, even when the economy turned. Hiring freezes all around, even though my job, my life, had nothing, I thought, to do with Washington or Wall Street. I was wrong. Who makes these things happen, these personal things, and why do we keep putting these people in charge? All my life, all the things I thought were circumstantial, bad luck, all the little inequities, the structural humiliations, the struggles to make ends meet, all these things I thought were personal. Well, they are personal. This is a personal poem, but we all know the personal is political. I have 3 young daughters, little army of feminists. This is their life. This is safe water. This is affordable birth control. This is affordable college. This is Black Lives Matter. This is yes to every letter of LGBTQ+. This is Me Too. This is enough is enough. This is Social Security, the job market. This is a living wage. This is Standing Rock. This is stopping war. This is the lives of immigrants, of refugees. This is the lives of undocumented workers, of children, those war-torn or those at the borders or those in our schools on lockdown. This is their lives. This is diverse abilities. This is healthcare. This is fighting the terrible spew of white nationalists. This is wildfires and hurricanes. This is climate change. This is fracking. This is the levees breaking. Everyone's in their own personal poem, and our poems can feel so separate, and they're not. We're all in this boat. And the people who control the circumstances of our lives, they're far away. It's time to yell far so they can hear. It's time to pull the fisticuffs out, friends. It's time to say, this is my body, this is my poem, this is my life, this is my family, this is my whole world. It's time to be brave, to be restless and wild and strong in resistance, because the personal is political. And this is a personal poem. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Becca, thank you so much for being here. And I also was almost in tears, but got myself together for a moment such as this. I'd like just to take a brief moment to share with you why I agreed to work with Becca and to support this event at APT. I think every single woman I know has an experience or a story about how they came to understand the importance of a woman having the right to choose. And for me, I was thinking about 3 critical moments in my life. And I think the first time I ever thought about that, my mother was a college student at a historic Black college in North Carolina. And as a young woman, as she was teaching the Weber girls, there's 4 of us, about agency over our own bodies, she shared how she came back to school from spring break and found her college roommate under the bed bleeding profusely because she became pregnant and had an illegal abortion and no medical care afterwards. Another critical moment for me and my awareness about this is I actually started my professional career up in Watertown, New York at a Planned Parenthood. I was a sexuality educator. And a rural family from the county brings their 12-year-old daughter in, and the mom looks at me and says, "Gwen, I think she might be pregnant." And I said, "Well, let's find out." The clinic does the test. This young girl is pregnant. It was the result of incest. And she was like 7 months pregnant and had no idea. that she was pregnant. And I will never forget the sound that came out of this little girl when that stethoscope was placed on her belly and into her ears to help her understand that there was something happening to her. And the look on her parents' face and just saying to me, if I'd known that this was happening and we knew that we had a choice, what would we do? And those seminal moments, I was really probably in college when I became aware of Planned Parenthood. But what happened for me over time and over my career in Auburn, for about 6 years, I was the regional president at the time for the Planned Parenthood of the Rochester and Syracuse region. And of course, Planned Parenthood's always hot buttons for people. But I will never forget the courage of that staff, the courage of our board, as we continued to make sure that women in our region had fair, equitable access to abortion. It was her right and her body. And our CEO having her life threatened, me being challenged and taunted every single time we drove in and out of that driveway. But something your grandfather said is so important to me, is that I think there comes a point in everyone's life when we have to decide whether or not we will have the courage to stand up for what we believe in. And what moves me to tears about your grandfather, and I will forever be thankful and think of myself as his legacy in action, is that he had the courage to do the right thing, Becca. So to the Michaels family, to you, I want to thank you so much for me, the women in my family, and all the women that I work with and support. So I like to start Q&As by asking this question. Let's see what they were thinking about. What was your general reaction to the reading of the article and the watching of the documentary? Every answer is correct. I'm basically being nosy. Just thoughts. What went on in your head, your heart, your gut? Go right ahead.
Of the articles. Sorry, chills.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Becca. No, we couldn't, Donna.
Every time I read about it, every time I think about it, and certainly I get chills up and down my spine because I certainly know people who went through terrible times, including my own grandmother, who had been widowed twice and was married a third time and was raising her children and her stepchildren. And of course, it was an illegal abortion, but she just couldn't do it anymore. They couldn't afford it, and they couldn't handle it. And then people of my generation and people of my daughter's generation. And I look at the state legislature there, and I see a bunch of old white men. And I'm really glad that I'm sure it doesn't look that way anymore. So thank you to the Michaels family and to everybody who made this happen.
Other thoughts, ideas? Thank you.
This is my second time seeing the documentary, and thank you for reading the Slate article that I've read in 2022. I grew up in Auburn, and I didn't know of this story really until I saw. And I was a pretty good student, especially in social studies, and I feel like I had good teachers. Until his face was put up on the Equal Rights Heritage Center in there. That was probably the first time I even read about this story and learned about it. And then I saw that documentary. And on my second watch, Ruth Messenger there talked about models of moral courage. And I think about what I learned in high school about all the kind of evil things like the Trail of Tears and bad examples of leadership, and what the world would be like if we held up models of moral courage in our leaders more often than just those who kind of wreak havoc on the world, what type of leaders we'd have. So that's what stood out to me on this second watch. And I'm so grateful that you came, and I'm so grateful that the Michaels family shared your grandfather with all of us because of the impact it had on all of your families' lives. And that sharing is something that we all get to benefit from. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Becca, do you have any thoughts or reactions to what you've been hearing?
Oh, I mean, this is, interesting to hear that people who grew up here didn't know the story because, as I said, this is just something I knew. I mean, I was 2 when this happened, so I obviously don't have any memory of it, but I feel like I do because the story was just a part of our family lore forever. But I never thought of this. I think it took me a long time to think of this as something that was broader than just something that had happened in our family with my grandpa. I think it was far later into my early adult life when I think I truly understood the impact of this, right? We knew that he had done this thing. We knew he had been courageous. We knew it had made a difference, but it was really our family story. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that you didn't know about it. And we did have very good social studies teachers, and I'm sure we never talked about it. It wasn't something we talked about, right? So, yeah, it's always interesting for me to see what other people think of this, because again, this is our family story that I know by heart, and I don't know, I'm always just really moved to hear how other people are moved by this story. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Take my glasses off so I could see you. Isn't that interesting? Yes.
So I want to thank Becca so much for writing the article, and I had the privilege of making a film about Connie Cook, who is right behind you, and talk about moral courage. She was one of 3 women in the Assembly and a Republican, and she brought the bill forth. So that, to me, she's a role model for me. And although I know the story well because I made this film about Connie and put George in it, I saw the documentary and I cried. When I see this documentary about your father, I cry. It's moving, beautifully made, and needs to be seen by so many people, especially now. So thank you.
Well, and if I can just answer that, I mean, I know how important it is for people in the dominant culture to stand up. And so I understand that a white, cisgendered male, right, my grandfather made obviously a big, important choice and is known for it. But she wrote the bill. Connie Cook wrote this bill. And I often feel like it's great that my grandfather gets these accolades. She wrote the damn bill, and I never got to meet her, but I always think about her, and your film about her was just wonderful. And I think we can't forget about that. He gets the glory for what he did in the moment, and I don't want to downplay it, but my God, she wrote the bill. That's what I heard.
There she
Wow.
is.
Oh my gosh.
Hi.
Exactly, right? It's cooking in here.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cook. I'm Connie's daughter. And of course, I see a picture of my mother. Behind me, and I think, oh, I have that pin still. So in all of this, you talk about family stories, and this was part of my life. And I don't think at the time I knew the impact. I didn't. I was 13 when this was happening. So, but I do remember the discussions and a mother, and I remember later talking with my mother about your grandfather, of course. They were friends and close, and how they all worked together on this. And I don't know. I'm really glad to be here tonight. I'm glad it came. I saw the film about your grandfather as well, and it's very impactful. It took all of them to make it happen. So my mother's work, your grandfather's courage at the time, it took all of them, and here we are, still doing this. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But thank you very much, and thank you for your article, and also the poem that we heard was just
amazing. So thank you. Yeah, your poem was so moving. I loved it.
I don't think that it's an accident that we are all here together on this day. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about moral courage. What does that mean to you personally? You see it embodied. I come from a family where my parents did great things, but it was just kind of like what we did. So we didn't think it was a big deal. But I see in my own family acts of moral courage. And I'm wondering what you're thinking about that idea. It's like part of your family's way of being. But in the context of what's happening in America, the world today, what's your thought about that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what it has done for me is it makes me extremely frustrated, and that's too soft a word, when I see people not having courage. And I'm focusing specifically on political courage, which I think is moral courage, right?
Yep.
And when I see it, which is rare, I make a point to reach out. So I live in Massachusetts, and years ago, we were having the run-up to the legalization of gay marriage in Massachusetts. And state senator at a time was a Republican, did not agree with him on anything, but he took a risk and he voted for it. And so I reached out to him because I knew he was likely getting hate mail and whatever, nasty calls from people. And I wanted him to know that I really appreciated his political courage, even though on most things I didn't agree with him. Or, when I see, a Liz Cheney, who, my God, I don't agree with on anything, or an Adam Kinzinger. I mean, I try to reach out and just say that I want you to know that I see your courage. Because it's not easy, and it should be easy. I mean, I think about right now where if we could have a handful of people in the Congress stand up and do what's right, we could end this nightmare we're in. It really doesn't take that much courage or that many people. And so to me, it makes me very frustrated with people who go into politics and want power for the sake of power, but they don't stand for something, right? What are you there for? And so it makes me frustrated. I don't tolerate it very well.
Neither do I. Thank God for therapy and theology, right? Any other questions or thoughts? What was going on in your heart, your mind, when you were watching this?
Hi. What really inspired me was that it reminded me, and maybe all of us, that one conversation can make a difference. Whereas everyone was involved to bring us here, okay, to this point. But the tipping point, wow, just gave me goosebumps. So thank you.
I think that's a powerful observation. And one of the things I've been thinking about and talking a lot in my inner circle, Becca, about is the importance of those one conversations. And I think a lot of times for my male colleagues, it often, because it's often not a real personal thing for them, issues of reproductive health, and I mean inside their bodies, that it is often the women in their family that will inspire them to think differently about it. And I love that their grandfather had that realization that, what if it was my granddaughter? And I think that was such a powerful thing. And I think it leads us all to think about what's the one conversation we may need to be having in this moment on pick an executive order on anything that's happening in our country right now. But I was really taken by that one conversation.
Well, and that was interesting because one of the phenomenal things about us getting together to write this article, we've always been very close with all of our cousins. But when we started getting together virtually to write this article and sharing stories, I had never heard that story. So that was Jim's twin daughters who told that story of being in the car with my grandfather, and then he mentioned that. I was the granddaughter.
Right.
So I had never heard that story till we wrote that article. But I think about my mom, who was going to be here tonight, but she's unfortunately not feeling well. And just thinking about her taking this up with my grandfather. I mean, and they were always very close. But, she wasn't the daughter. She was the daughter-in-law. And she got in his face, which is not really that on brand for her, I don't think. But it just shows how critically important this was, and she was willing and determined to go outside her comfort zone. Because those conversations do matter. And I think in our regular day-to-day life, they matter. Those one-on-one conversations you have with people, you change a mind here or there, and it ripples out.
Yeah, it really does. Any other thoughts, ideas, questions? Right here, Judy, Miss Bryant, and then right behind her.
Yeah, what resonated with me, I worked in New York City, I worked for a law firm for Harriet Pilpel. She was the lawyer who argued the Griswold case at the Supreme Court. So I kept thinking about her, which I imagine she and George Michaels had some conversations. Yeah.
And Dom, there was a question or a comment.
This is the second time I've seen this. It was shown a year or two ago at the Kuka Museum, and I was shocked when I saw it and just so moved. And then I visited my sister in Boston, and she is a political activist, feminist, had never heard of your grandfather. That shocked me. I talked to some of my sisters, and they from Auburn. And so I showed it, this was after, you could get it online, and I showed it to my sister. And then when we came here tonight, I said to my husband, I'm so grateful for this place, for Auburn Public Theater, for the community here, that we get to, we get to be here, and we get this community of like-minded, and hopefully some people who are not like-minded but came to see this anyway because it says so much. I mean, your mom, Connie Cook, I mean, she was Republican, and she wrote the bill. And the whole story is so remarkable, but I am grateful to be here and to be part of this community. Thank you.
To hear. Thank you. Couple more.
Hi, I belong to a group in Ithaca called End Abortion Stigma, and one of the things that I do that's my little piece is that I talk and teach classes in high school about abortion and crisis pregnancy centers, and also have been involved in getting our Ithaca history of the clergy consultation service. One of the ministers in my Unitarian church was in that clergy consultation service. I've known him for years, and I never knew it. And so we have been, Carol Kamen from Ithaca wrote a short play about when the clergy went underground, telling the story of David Evans and Connie Cook. And so we have to keep educating kids, educating adults. We have to keep getting these stories. And they're even more precious now because we need that inspiration of our forebearers, of Connie, of your dad, of the clergy consultation service, all of them, the people that stood up. So thank you so much for this.
Anything else? You know, Beck, oh, sorry, go right ahead. Oh, and right there, Dom, and then right here, too.
Good evening, everyone. I'm actually Angel's brother, Tony. The woman who just commented before me, thank you for your words, because it brought together cohesion of the thoughts I was having. And you were talking about education, and my takeaway from the film is I grew up with Becca through high school, and we spent quite a lot of time together, being in plays together, choir, select choir, jazz choir. And if you don't know, she's a brilliant soprano as well. That talent is not known. And even I can remember a couple gatherings at the Michaels house of the drama club or the choir. I can't remember that much, but and I find it pretty baffling that, and I didn't even know about this vote or anything beyond the Michaels family besides Becca as a classmate and friend until a few years ago. And it got me thinking, it's not just the vote and the right for abortion, but you roll back, Harriet Tubman, William Seward, it's not even taught in Auburn. And I think it's important that these topics and this information start getting into the public education system, because without awareness, it's just stagnant water.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think that's very powerful. Tony, as I was preparing to come here, my husband said something very similar to that, Becca. He's like, wow, so many game-changing people, leaders have really been in this community and done world-changing things. And unless it's usually Angela brings it to our attention, because Auburn Public Theater is the spot, we literally live in this community and not know. And I think one of the beautiful things that happened for us is literally having the New York State Equal Right Heritage Center here in the community. But what's your thinking about that? I mean, one walk through Fort Hill Cemetery, just as one of the cemeteries, will be like, well, I really live with famous people. But it's true, there's so many quiet, very powerful, world-changing people who have done things large and small from our city. And like Tony says, we wouldn't know about it a lot of times unless Angela put it right in our face through the arts in some way.
Yeah, I mean, Angela putting things in our face, that's a good way to put it.
All the time.
That's what does it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in your Facebook post yesterday, you talked about Auburn being the center of the universe. So, yeah, I mean, again, we just grew up with it. I feel like Harriet Tubman in particular, I've just always felt this, I don't know, connection. I was like, she was here. She was here. And, you know, whenever we were just at the, finally visited the African American Museum of History and Culture at the Smithsonian, which will hopefully still be around. And when I, you know, it's an incredible place, but when I got to the Harriet Tubman exhibit, you know, I feel this sisterhood with her, which is crazy, right? Obviously, it was long before I was born. But yeah, or I remember years ago reading Team of Rivals, and right in the first chapter, it's talking about Auburn. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that other than it's kind of amazing.
It is, right? It's like a cool little secret that everybody needs to know about. Well, I wonder, for those of you who live here in the region, what's your thought about that? We live in this city. There are so many amazing people that many of us are even just evolving to know about. What do you think that's about? Are they like the Michaels, where they're just doing their thing? I'm just going to go home. Harriet Tubman just did her thing and went and lived on South Street. What do you think about that when you hear that? That all of these amazing people, and many of us are sitting here going, who knew? What do you think that is?
Can I go backwards just a little bit?
Sure.
In 1963, all the obstetricians in Cayuga County were Catholic. You could not get birth control information.
Wow.
1963. So I became part of a group. It was an early community action program group. We couldn't get a doctor to be part of our group. None of the doctors, gynecologists or private practice, because they were politicized not to. Fortunately, Dr. Lubansky moved into Auburn. The gray hairs among us. And he became part of the group and was castigated by his fellow physicians. And he said, no, this is what I do.
Yeah.
But we just have to remember where we were, and we have come far. But it's the tiny little things that happen.
Absolutely. Anything else? Because I'm right ahead. because being a member of a famous family is exhausting. I don't want to wear Ms. Becca out. I'm sure her family would like some of her energy, so please.
I'd just like to say something else about that wonderful poem that we heard. I don't think enough has been said about it so far. I found it extremely moving. And the idea that the personal is political, that's such a canard. And yet, when you turn it and twist it and put it in all those different contexts, it comes alive again. And I thought that was truly beautiful. People talk a lot about moral courage, and I think that's really important. I think there's such a thing as moral justice, too. And I think that this session has been very much about moral justice. And, you know, it's interesting that although it took a lot of courage for what your grandfather did, and he surely suffered for what he did, but look at the results that it's yielding. And thank you.
To double dip. I'm not sure that locally things have changed so much. I remember when in the 1990s, a young physician came, a family practitioner, and was trying to get rights to practice at Auburn Hospital, and they had to fill out a list of all the procedures he would do, and one of the things he put on there was elective DNC, and they turned it down. They turned him down, and he had to change it to therapeutic DNC. At the time, and I don't know if anything has changed, there had never been a legal abortion performed anywhere in Cayuga County. I have not heard that that's changed.
I haven't either, Don. I haven't either. It's just, it's food for thought, right? So Becca, I really do want to give you some time to spend with your family, although we'd like to consume all of you. Do you have just a closing thought that you'd like to share?
I mean, I just want to thank everybody for being here to hear this story. Again, this was just kind of our family thing, and I love that it has had an impact on people and made people think. And as you said, you know, all the good that has come out of it. And one of the things I like to think about is, and one of the things we hoped our article might do was make politicians of today think about their legacy. You know, even if, let's say they're being selfish. Okay, great, be selfish. Think about what your grandchildren will say about you someday. Don't you want that? Don't you want your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren who come after you're long gone to be proud of what you did? And I'm hopeful that maybe someday somebody will read this article or see this film and say, I'd like to be that person.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Becca. And Angela, thank you for giving me the opportunity to sit with Becca. And just a couple of things that I would say that I'm walking away from is, one, is that all of us have a story in our family that we probably should tell. So I would really like to inspire you, if those stories aren't being told, for you to do it for the very reason that Becca is encouraging us to do it. And the other thing is, in this climate, I am very much thinking about my own legacy, and I'm constantly, through my thought pieces in my work, asking people to ponder this question. What kind of ancestor will you be? And because what I always imagine my family sitting with Henry Louis Gates the 15th, right? And they open the page, and this is your great-great-great-grandmother Gwen. What do I want those ancestors of mine to think about? And the thing that made me so emotional about your grandfather is that he was conscious about that. And look at what this generation, his descendants, are saying about him. And I think in the moment that we're living in today, we all need to be conscious and intentional, because every word, deed, and action we take is impacting the kind of ancestor you'll be known as. So I want to thank you, and I want to let you know, to me, your grandfather is a great ancestor that I'm now adopting.
Excellent.
I'm adding another hyphen to my name. I'm so inspired by his courage. My husband's like, here she goes. Great. So thank you so much. I'd like to give the mic to Angela.
I'm Angela Dadaba, the artistic producing director. We only have one more tiny piece of programming here tonight. A very special thank you to Becca and to Gwen and to Melina and to Catherine, and to Lee, who's here with us, and to Kathy Cook. Can we just give them all a round of applause? So when I read Becca's article in 2022, I sort of tucked it away and I thought, okay, we have to do something with this at Auburn Public Theater someday. And in the fall, September, when I could sort of feel-ish where things were going, I thought, okay, we'll do something with this for Women's History Month. And when I got online to look up some more details about the bill, I realized that it was actually April 9th, 1970, which makes today the 55th birthday of the passing of the bill. So we have a cake. Thank you, Dave. And Dom is going to lead us in singing Happy Birthday to the Bill. If we can all join in. And we're going to cut the cake, and on your way out, please stop and enjoy a piece of cake.
Happy birthday to you.